Welcome everyone. Thanks for being here, Tonic Experience. My name's Darren Kramer. This is an exciting episode. I'm really looking forward to speaking with my friend and former alum, Andy Middleton. Andy, thanks so much for being here and making the time.
My pleasure, Darren. Really my pleasure. Glad to be here.
This is exciting, and I'm so glad we were able to make it work out. Andy is living and working in Vienna, Austria, and so we had to deal with the time change, and but we made it happen, and technology was the answer, right?
Yes, and a little human ingenuity.
Yes, it's this is going to be really fun. We're going to cover a lot of really passionate topics for both of us, including music, music education, and our favorite beverages, and really one of the most important things is our love for the earth and nature and animals. And Andy is a real passionate environmentalist, and I think that's really important. So that's the kind of stuff we feature here on Sonic Tonic. We like to kick off the show by talking about our favorite beverage.
Quench my thirst, baby, got to get liquid inside me. Quench my hot spot, burning, yearning for my thoughts.
Andy, what is one of your favorite beverages, and what are we drinking today?
Well, I'm glad you said one of my favorite beverages. This is a vegetable juice. I started running about 8 years ago, and this really helps me, and I've become quite hooked on it. This one is a mixture, all organic ingredients, cucumber, an apple, a lemon, a big chunk of ginger, parsley, fennel, and a bit of red beet. And I'm thirsty, so.
Please stop quick and put out the fire. Now throw me in a trench, cause I gotta get drenched. Just
Did you put chia seeds in that? It looks kind of gelled.
It does look gelled, and actually I don't know exactly what, but it's really, I don't think I put enough liquid.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is carrot, apple, spinach, celery, and a little bit of probiotic
Oh, excellent.
mixed in. So this is a little more, well, actually no, I taste both. There's fruit and veggie in there, and I really like it. The thing I think a lot of people can't get over is the crazy look of it. It looks bizarre and like it won't taste good. And every drink I ever make is really quite good. And is that what you found?
Yes, and actually, 7 years ago, I was visiting my close friend and favorite drummer in the world, Alan Jones, in Portland, and he gave me for the very first time kefir, or some people call it kefir. It's a fermented milk product like yogurt, and I bought on the internet this little bunch of the organism, whatever you want to call it, and so I've been drinking that every day for 7 years, and it's really kind of like a monster. It grows, and I've been giving it to my friends, and so I'm 58 years old now, and I am aware of the wear and tear that my previous lifestyle excesses exacted on my body, and so running and eating really well and drinking, or let's say eating probiotics every day is really important to me, because I feel great all the time. And I wake up feeling good, and my body is healthy, and I'm just so grateful for that, because my mom died of cancer, and I just know so many people that have had serious illnesses, and my dad just had surgery a couple days ago, and he's 91. We were worried he wasn't going to make it through the general anesthetic, but he called me afterwards. Yeah, I'm doing fine. So yeah, it's a good thing. So among my favorite drinks are these health supporting drinks, and I do also like a very good espresso or a cappuccino. And as soon as I finish this, since in Vienna it's 5:30 in the afternoon, I'm going to break into one of my other favorite drinks, which is a porter beer. But let's get into some other things first. Years ago, my first trip to Norway, I was sitting around drinking beer, and one guy said something I'd never ever heard of before. He said the reason that you can drink so much beer compared to water, for example, you can't sit down and drink 6 liters or 6, half liters of water as easily as you can down 6 beers, right? Well, actually, I can't really do that either anymore. But he said it's because of the bitterness, that the bitterness of the flavor gives you this desire to keep drinking, or at least the ability. But just drinking that much water, after a while, you have to back off.
Yeah.
You heard one that Charlie Parker once had a water drinking contest with somebody?
No.
There's all these stories about him. His 100th birthday is, I think, on the 26th or somewhere around the end of this month, and I got invited by the Austrian radio. They have a sort of like NPR, but it's the Austrian state radio, and the jazz critic invited me and some other people to talk about Charlie Parker. And so I'm trying to find all the little funny stories about Bird that I've heard, and that's one of them, that he won a water drinking contest with somebody. Maybe you should edit this out. I don't know.
I love it. I was just learning about blue whales 2 nights ago, and I saw the best 20-minute video explaining things. It is so informative and super fascinating. Anyway, the blue whale is the largest creature to ever live on the earth, including dinosaurs. It's basically the longest and the heaviest thing ever. And but when they eat, they put so much water in their body, in their mouth, to eat the krill, and then they have to filter it out. And they're saying if they don't have proper control of their mouth and their tongue to expel that water in an organized way, which they usually do, that they could actually die. And it could be a damaging thing because of the volume of the water. So, water is life-giving, but it's also super powerful. And I think one of the things about health with people, too, is that I don't think a lot of people drink enough water.
I drink liters upon liters of water, and more than almost anybody else. And also when I do gigs, I drink a huge amount of water on stage, because for me, really playing a gig where I'm playing, let's say, a small group, and I'm really improvising on a high level with an interactive band. It's like a really athletic experience for me. And I realized that on the best of days, I'm not aware of my physical body when I'm in the moment of improvising, but all the preparation that we do, practicing and making sure we're healthy and that we have enough energy, that is the springboard from which we're able to move into some kind of musical trance state where, and I think most musicians would tell you this, and I'm not saying it's only a jazz thing. I'm sure when you're really playing a Beethoven violin sonata, for example, from memory, there's an expressive state of mind that goes beyond thinking and beyond even self-awareness.
Yeah, and I think that can be true in a lot of things, even with, in sports and stuff too. The muscle memory has been trained, and then you try to not think and just be, and that's such a cool such a cool feeling. I've had it a few times, and you're always trying to get back there.
Yeah, well, I think one of the reasons people love sports like skiing or surfing is because it's so intense and so immediate. You have to be in the moment. Or rock climbing. The only thing that matters is that next handhold. And I've done it very little, but I did free climbing once or twice. Definitely life-threatening situation, and I obviously survived. But it was the most intense focus that I've ever experienced, because there is nothing else but the next handhold. If you mess it up, muck it up, that's it, man. So I don't do climbing anymore because life is too precious for me.
Yeah, I think it's a serious addiction that some people have. And there's an awesome documentary if people are interested in that kind of thing. It's called Steep.
Mm.
I'm a Colorado native. I've never been a skier. I've gone maybe 5, 6 times.
Mm.
Enjoyed it, but didn't love it, and it's just not my passion. But steep about the heli skiing and
Oh
all of
yeah.
that. And anyway, some of the descriptions and the way they speak about things there is really fascinating about there's nothing more of being in the moment than your life depending on the next move, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, in a way it could be that the rise of extreme sports, um, I think it's accurate to say that 50 years ago, people were not pursuing extreme sports on the level that they are now, leaping off of mountains attached to sails, or, I mean, paragliding and all that. Maybe they would have if they had the chance, but I think our society is so full of distractions, so full of overwhelming information, and there's so many challenging and sad and frustrating and catastrophic things going on. If I could just not think about that for an hour, I'm happy, right? And so let's go hang on the side of a mountain and force our brains to not think about the rest of the world. And it is a kind of refreshing coming back to the core of being human and not being, let's say, being an individual consciousness and not part of a great association of consciousnesses.
And
I try to meditate so when I meditate every day, I'm not a good meditator, really. Actually, I spoke to a teacher once about how in that time I was always falling asleep, and so I told her I was a professional jazz saxophone player and explained the experience, and she said, well, actually that's the same. That experience that I was mentioning earlier of losing sense of my own body is what this master meditation teacher was saying was her goal. And so she said, just do that. But yeah, the chance to, I was thinking about the other day, there was an article in the New York Times recently about this wall of galaxies that has been recently discovered behind a cloud of dark matter. And when I read about this stuff, I just think that the unfathomable scale of immensity that science is uncovering in the universe, it just floors me. And then I think, here I am in my little life, and this is what matters right now. Did I plug my mic in? And then I think, well, what does that have to do with the wall of galaxies? Like, and you kind of think, oh wait, maybe my little life is not really like. So,
I think it's both,
but
though.
it is,
That's
though.
what's so cool, and
but it is.
It's very cool to be aware, and I think I'm trying to become always more and more aware of not just your thoughts or being in your life, but then trying to be an observer of your thoughts.
Yeah.
And as you're having this thought, thinking, oh yeah, how interesting, I'm having that thought. And if you keep this big picture in mind, I think it's humbling, but it's also inspiring. And I think that's one of the main changes that needs to shift with consciousness of human beings, so that we go, hey, by the way, we don't have anywhere else to go. This little tiny dot that Carl Sagan says, right, is floating in the middle of nowhere, and somehow the conditions were right to make life possible. Everyone, this is Andy Middleton, friend of mine. We passed passed in the night at University of Miami. He was leaving in the spring of '87 when I was arriving in the fall, but I had always heard of his great playing and all. And so, Andy, where did you grow up?
I grew up in a suburb of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I went to the University of Rochester for 2 years. I didn't understand what I was doing with music, and I didn't really pursue music intelligently from at that time of my life. And I auditioned at Eastman School of Music as a classical saxophone player, and the phone rang during my audition, and the guy took the call, And I just thought, oh, okay. When you answer the phone while a guy is playing his audition piece, it probably means you really aren't doing very well at all.
I was
But I
practicing
only
3 or
applied to
4
the
hours a
University of
day,
Rochester, which is
but not
associated
really
with
in a
Eastman School of
structured
Music.
way.
And
I
so,
took an improv class, but I didn't have any lessons.
And my older brother, Rob, is a saxophone player also. And at that point, I think he was going to Rutgers University. And the head of the jazz department there was Paul Jeffries, who had played with Charles Mingus and Thelonious Monk. And so Rob was in this more New York urban, real jazz environment. And I was just bouncing off the walls, practicing in Rochester. And he said, hey, why don't you come and audition at Rutgers? And then somebody, I guess one of the guys that was going to school with me said, I'm going to go to the University of Miami next year. And so I auditioned at those two places. And I got to Miami. I flew down there. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anything. And I just took a bus to the campus. And I happened to stumble into, guess who? Gary Lindsay. I was walking on campus and I saw this guy and I said, hey, do you know where the jazz department is? And he said, yeah, just come with me. And that was Gary Lindsay. My teacher later on, you know?
Yeah, awesome, man. Yeah, I just saw Gary Lindsay at the Gen conference in New Orleans in January. I was doing an Ableton workshop there, and then we had a real nice chat after that for a bit, and then he was gearing up to do his final concert in April, and now that's all passed over, and then he's retired now. So I'm assuming if things get back to somewhat normal, they'll have an actual send away concert, and I'm gonna fly down for that because I was gonna miss it and be in Atlanta at the time. But he was a big influence on me, and I wouldn't be the writer that I am without his guidance, because his formulas and his concept really had a perfect impact for me when I was at school.
Yeah, I use his book in my classes. I've been teaching jazz theory, a 4-semester class at the university here in Vienna. It's not the University of Vienna, it's the Music and Arts University of the city of Vienna. Yeah, his book is basically the perfectly organized expression of what he was teaching me and my fellow classmates in the mid-1980s. Yeah. And I do want to mention also Ron Miller, the composition teacher, was immensely influential on me, as were Gary Campbell and Gary Keller and also Whit Seidner. All the teachers.
All of those guys, everybody that went through, was lucky enough to go to the school, has those same thoughts. I mean, wow, what a cool environment to put yourself in and expand your musical world, It was so fun when my dad and I were on a Eastern European river cruise, and started off in Vienna, and I'm like, Andy, we got to connect. So we made it happen, and then that was so fun. Seeing the school and everything. And then one of the coolest things was that then I was telling you, man, we're gonna go check out Mahler. Is my favorite classical composer, and I was just like, Vienna equals Mahler to me. And I'd been to Vienna a couple times before, but I was like, I'm gonna go find his grave, and I gotta experience this just as a little quest for myself. And as soon as I mentioned to you, oh yeah, you got to take this train to this station and da 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 da, and you had it all set up, and meanwhile we're sipping coffee and eating apple strudel. I'm going, come on, man, this is great.
Yeah,
that was almost 2 years ago already.
Wow. Yeah. Well, Vienna is an amazing place. There's a very funny quote attributed to Mahler, which does reflect the character of Vienna. He says, when the end of the world arrives, I'm going to go back to Vienna because everything there happens 50 years late. And Vienna is an interesting thing because it's very, very modern, but it's also very traditional. In fact, all of Austria is like that. I've been here 14 years now. And at the beginning, I was so aware of the similarities with American culture, and the differences have become very, very apparent. American culture is essentially a transplanted and varied version of the European cultures, but it's a charming and beautiful and fantastic place to live. And especially in Corona times, I am so glad to be here.
how has it been to be an expat? How have you been received, and how was the adjustment in the first year?
That's a really, it's an interesting question. Vienna is, especially the jazz world is a kind of, I'll use the term old boys network, and the people are delightful, but they, for some reason, I'm not, I was never really, I didn't want to be part of the, hey, let's play in a big band kind of scene, and I didn't want to play commercial music. And I came in here as the guy from New York, recording artist, touring guy, and I don't really know what people think of me, but Fritz Power is a name that's not so well known, but after Joe Zawinul, Fritz Power was the Austrian jazz musician. In fact, he was, Zawinul recommended him to Cannonball. When Zawinul went to play with Miles, he told Cannonball to get this guy Fritz, but Fritz didn't want to move to the United States. So Fritz has been a power for jazz for a long time, and I played in his band. And my wife Sheila had a duo with him also. And so we were on stage at Porgy and Bess, and Fritz said this beautiful thing. He said, Andy Middleton's the best thing that happened to Vienna in the last 50 years. Wow, that's super nice. Thank you, Fritz. But on the other hand, I have this image of, it's like I walked into a room with all the jazz musicians sitting around in a circle facing inwards. They all turned and looked at me. Some of them said hi. Fritz said, hey, great to see you. But all the rest of them turned back towards the center. And exactly. And, I don't take it personally. I just see it as, and I think a lot of small places are like that, where we got to take care of our own, and jazz is actually quite fractured in Europe. Just like in the United States. I mean, all the major cities have their scenes, but only when you reach a certain place in terms of renown do the Chicago guys know the New York guys, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And so there's some astoundingly good musicians in Poland, in Hungary, in Slovakia, in Italy, of course. But most of the top Austrian jazz musicians don't know those guys unless they play with them. So in a way, it's been good for me because I play with the guys in Poland, Hungary, Italy, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Germany, Switzerland, France, Belgium, Netherlands, Denmark. That's what's great about being here is, I get to play with all those guys.
Sonic Tonic is about, though, it's like saying being in the moment, but also being open, trying to grow, and notice how many more commonalities we have between us instead of these differences, and kind of open yourself up and try to disregard some of your past prejudices and go, well, that kind of brought you to here, but maybe I love Ben Hardy. He's a guy I've been reading a lot of in the last 2 years. And he's saying, live as your future self. Think as your future self. Who do you want to be? So it's that thing of, instead of judging someone from your old thoughts, maybe try to just have a clean slate every day, meditate, have your juice, feel good about yourself, and then go, what can I learn today?
Yeah. Well, I think as musicians, we have a special gift and obligation to ourselves. We wake up every day, and when we approach our musical project, whatever it might be, playing the saxophone, learning this tune, learning this repertoire for this gig, composing something, creating a curriculum, whatever. We actually, the way I look at it, I look at what I cannot yet do, and I then therefore take steps to develop and to become better. And I think there are many people who don't have the opportunity to see themselves in that light and don't pursue a lifelong course of growing. and developing, because I think it's a spiritual, emotional, human, social, musical, physical connection that that keeps getting better. And lately I've been saying, wow, every single day of my life has been amazing. Of course, there's been some really, really scary, frustrating, depressing, sad, failure days. But, if you don't know what black is, how do you know what white is? If you don't know what up is, how do you know what down is? And so all of those are informing, or let's say enriching, the fact that there are quite a lot of days where I had successes, I had artistic satisfaction, I had a great day, whatever. But unless I have that balance, I didn't really live. And so I can just say, okay, hey, instead of calling this good and that bad, I'm just going to say, this is life.
Speaking of which, if all our listeners out there are enjoying Andy sharing his life and musical experiences, consider giving a donation of any size. It really helps support the show and compensate Andy for his time. Links are on the screen in the description, and you can visit andymiddleton.com. Everything's happening for you and not to you. So each time you're running across this, whoa, how awesome. I got a flat tire today. I was supposed to stop and think about this and do this other thing. It's happening for you as a guide, as a way to learn. And if you embrace that, boy, it really changes your perspective.
That's great. I remember reading about some guy who somebody stole his stereo or something like that. And instead of being angry, he said, well, I guess they needed it more than I do. And I was like, how do you do that? How do you, but that's a great way to put it. So that, yes, life doesn't happen to me. Life happens for me. Or another way to put it, which I think gives everybody who wants to think this way more self actualization power. If you say, I attract with my thinking the events in my life, and if I then take responsibility for this being in my life, then I know that I can either bring more of that or I can change it.
You're in charge. However, you got to let it unfold.
Yes.
In any case, don't take the victim mentality.
Right.
And have this, everything's, why is everyone against me? What? Nothing's going right. The more you think that, the more that happens. So it's like,
but those are great tunes, right? Everything happens to me, and do 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 do.
But there, leave it to a musician. You just brought it back to the musical realm here. We're going back into the sonic area, which actually I want to do. It's very interesting that you said Austria is steeped in tradition, but then it's really modern. And actually, that's kind of what I'm into and have been for a while with my electric trombone setup and Ableton Live. And I'm a jazz musician. I love playing quartet in a club and playing standards, but I've done that a lot. And I've always kind of loved this funk thing and the electronic thing and using pedals on my horn and kind of doing something new. So I've really embraced that the last few years. And and I thought with the Sonic Tonic experience, it's cool to have the guests all maybe step out of their comfort zone and play this. And you're a classic case for this. I'm so psyched that this worked out and you were willing to do it, because you're a self-proclaimed acoustic jazz saxophone player and composer. And but the beauty that I find with musicians, especially if you're open-minded, you're creative, and you have this skill, this decades of practice, you can apply that to anything you do.
Yeah.
And so Turbulent Altercation, you sent me a few takes, and I loved your email saying, man, I just don't feel good about these. This is not that happening. And then, and I read that before I listened to them, and then I listened to them, and I just laughed because in a good way, going, everybody is their worst critic, So you're all thinking this is not good, and And I'm hearing it and going, how refreshing this is, man. And this whole thing is on E minor. It's Dorian mode. That's it. But you're coming up with all this stuff really complex over this really cool funk electronic rhythm. And so how was the experience for you? I mean, what did you feel while you were recording?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because a lot came up. First of all, I was scrambling to figure out how to make GarageBand work and to see the seconds rather than the bars or something like that. You know, it's like I was just trying to get all this stuff together. But my first book is called Melodic Improvising, and it was published by Advanced Music in 2005. That was a huge and extremely valuable journey writing that book, and it's become the focus of my musical life. Really, the development of melodic ideas and how they are developed. And I started to realize that for me, melody is, and I'm a very harmonically oriented person, but melody is what I do on the saxophone. I can express harmony, but it's always expressed as a group of tones that are not simultaneously played. In other words, it's not a chord, it's a line. And so this book was really, really important for me. And my second book, which I'm working on now, is called Linear Tonality. And the idea is that the notes that an improviser plays or a composer writes, the line itself develops a feeling of coherence and togetherness and, for lack of a better term, tonality that is more important, and actually always was more important than the vertical note to chord or note to root relationship. And unfortunately, all of the analytical tools that have been developed for bebop, for example, are essentially useless. Melody that is free of harmonic reference is the way that Miles Davis Quintet played on the Live at the Plug Nickel recording. It was Miles Davis Quintet in 1965, December 22nd and 23rd in Chicago at the club called the Plug Nickel. And the story is that on the airplane, Tony Williams said, "Hey, let's play anti-jazz." And so they played standards. And so there's one take of Autumn Leaves where Wayne Shorter solo, and for 55 seconds, I think, Wayne, Herbie, and Ron Carter are all completely without harmonic reference. And then Wayne throws in the main theme, and they're all right there again. And so coming back to your tune, the thing is, I was realizing I don't really play with machines. I play with people who respond to what I do. And so my improvising, the format that I get the most out of and feel the best about now is when I play with people and there's an organic development of give and take and a creation of counterpoint. And so I recognize how challenging it is when I am the only voice that actually does anything at all. And so I was really frustrated by that. And as I wrote to you, I felt like the ghost of Michael Brecker was always looking over my shoulder, like, he is the absolute, the king of this domain, playing tenor saxophone over funky grooves and so I was just like, I don't want to play like Brecker. Actually, I can't play like Brecker. So, but that's why I said, here, you do it. Because each one of those takes, I felt like I got into something. And then, I'm looking at the counter going by and going, oh no, when do the trombones come in? Boo, 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 boo. And when's the head come back? And then I got to play the head. So, but it was really fun.
Great, I'm glad to hear it. And that's the point. I think it should be fun and it should challenge you. It's a neat concept. I love that thing you're talking about. Instead of thinking vertically, it's horizontal. It's about the melody, but you can do shapes and take it in and out of the tonality, right? And,
Yes.
I have another fellow grad, Rick Margitza, is going to be on the show here
Oh, good.
next month, and he's been one of my favorites and recorded on a tune on that same album, In the Now with Brecker, and he's been doing a very hip thing on Facebook.
I've seen it.
Entire
Yeah.
year, he's giving away a new lick every single day. His goal is to do 366 of them because it was a leap year. So he's like, and it's all different categories over one chord, over a 2-5-1. But when you hear someone, these great tenor players like yourself, when our listeners out there, if you hear somebody going, wow, he just kind of playing out, or I love the quote from The Office, why don't they just play the right notes, It's like, I hate jazz, just play the right notes. It's way more sophisticated than that. It's purposely like taking the harmony another place and then coming back with a great resolution. And a tune that's one chord like this, Miles, hearing Kenny Garrett play over that type of thing, right? That when I was at that was a big thing, and we went and saw Miles, and the whole school was there basically. It was like, man, we got to go to this Mecca, So then after the fact, we should let people know I actually added some effects toward the end of your solo, which you did not do, and it's sort of this cool collaboration thing, because then I can do it real time, and I've done enough with my setup where I try to do it organically, like you're saying, be in the moment, not too much planning, and just feel it. Use my iPad to trigger different sounds, and I think it's really cool. Okay.
Hey, Darren, I'm starting to get thirsty for my second favorite drink.
Quench my thirst, baby. Got to get liquid inside me. Quench my hot spot.
We have been enjoying our nice veggie drinks, which make us feel good, but there's another drink that makes us feel good too. So what do you got, Andy? What are you switching to? And by the way, I've never had a guest switch drinks in the middle of the show, so I love your style, man. Okay,
well, it's a border smashing, boundary smashing time today. This is an Austrian beer, or is it German? It might be German.
Same thing, right?
It's a port. Yeah, same thing, exactly. Just like, Canada's the 51st state, right?
Yeah.
And Mexico is part of Texas, as far as I know.
Yes,
yeah. So this is a porter, and it's organic, and it's 6.9% alcohol, and yeah. So I was going to get a stout, but I couldn't get to the beer specialty shop. So
I did get to the beer specialty shop.
That's very good. And of course, why they call it porter, right?
Explain it to us.
Because the working men who carried things in London, the porters who carried heavy things between the ships and the transportation on land, they wanted a heavy but still refreshing beer at the end of their day. And so the porter style is a dark roasted style of beer. Chocolate, coffee, and beer are all, ooh, yeah. They all have similar flavor elements that come from the carbonation, the carbon. You could even say the burning, the roasting of the coffee bean, the chocolate bean, or in the case of beer, it's the barley. That's so the barley is sprouted, then it's the sprouting process is stopped by heat, and so that's when they roast it, and they roast the barley to a dark color. It's not burned, it's actually what's that word, caramelized.
Yeah.
And so there's a caramel flavor in it that I very much like.
Since it's morning here, I thought I'd go for the oatmeal milk stout.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never had this one before. I like to kind of try new things. So Finkel and Garf. Who knew?
Okay.
So yeah,
how is
smooth, malty, chocolatey. So
well, here's to you, yeah, and here's to music and communication. And I did not know, Darren, that we shared so many viewpoints about life. We haven't had much of a chance to actually talk. If I'd gone on the road with you back when you were trying to get me to go on the road with you in 2000.
Yep.
Yeah. But my daughter had just been born and I didn't want to go on the road.
No, that was
she's now 20 years old. And so I'm ready now, man. Let's go. Actually, no, I'm not ready.
I ended up, my sister Dawn Kramer, we just featured her last week on Sonic Tonic. She plays trumpet. Got her on the tour, and then I ended up calling Art Hayes, who was a great sax player that went to North Texas.
Right.
So we had fun, toured for a year with Matchbox 20, Rob Thomas, and all, and it was great. You would have enjoyed it, but timing does matter. Yeah.
When I moved to New York in 1987 after getting my master's degree at Miami, I had this idea that I would, I don't know, I didn't even really know what I was doing. I was just, okay, let's do it. And when I think now, I mean, you mentioned something earlier about, we are in this moment. In other words, I am sitting in my chair in my apartment in Vienna now because of the choices I made every single day of my life. And so sometimes I think, if I had really gotten my wish to have the kind of career that I thought I wanted to have, would I actually have enjoyed it as much as the life that I have had? And so, thinking, all right, I get a beautiful child into my life, and then I go on the road. And then I come back and I go, who are you? And she looks at me and says, who are you? I didn't want that. And so I chose not to do that. And I'm really glad. I mean, I'm sure we would have had a great time. This is something I like to tell students, that the greatest work of art that you will ever create is yourself, your life. And so you mentioned something like this, who do you want to be as a musician? Who do you want to be as a person? What kind of life experiences do you want to have in your life that reflect your principles and your values, and leave you able to wake up in the morning and feel good? Now, we're unfortunately a bit tight for time because I forgot that you're 8 hours away instead of 7 hours away, and I have to go pick somebody up at the train station soon. But I did want to mention, you had asked me which piece I would like to promote on your show, and I don't have a current project that I'm working on other than my own life, but the events of the last year in terms of the crisis of climate change leads me to want to promote a composition of mine entitled Polar Bear Seas. And when I look at the opportunities that I've had in my life, actually, my friends, when I was so 20 years ago, a lot of playing, and I was kind of a preacher and always talking about environmental stuff. And so they actually created this thing called the Middleton Minute, where we would be on stage and it's like, okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the Middleton Minute. And so I would have 1 minute to recite as many environmental facts and figures as I could on stage. And then they would play this sort of like silly background music behind it. But I realized that my artistic life is the only opportunity that I really have to make a difference. And so my first record is called Acid Rain. My second record is called Terra Infirma, which I just took the term terra firma and just thought, okay, sick earth. It's not the earth that's sick. It's, well, you know. And so my latest commercial recording, which is still a little bit in the past already, is entitled Between Worlds. And that was more of a statement of having moved from New York to Austria and being between worlds in a way, not really in Austria, not really anymore in the United States. I don't know if everybody's aware of this, but the temperatures in Siberia, in the polar regions now, are higher than they've ever been. I just read today about these out of control fires on river delta in southern Argentina. So there's fires raging in southern Argentina. There's fires raging in Siberia.
Baghdad hit 125 degrees, is the hottest ever. Last night, yesterday.
God. Yeah, and so coming back to what I was saying before about, you know, we are this infinitesimal thing in the wall of galaxies, you know, but in fact, our individual choices actually have power and have meaning. And so this composition, Polar Bear Seas, came about. I was reading about a research project in the Arctic. These guys were in a ship following a mother polar bear. She was trying to find ice, and she was swimming with her baby cub, and she swam for 40, what was it now? Almost 72 hours before she found ice. And the baby, the polar bear cub, died along the way, and the mother bear lost 40% of her body weight. This is the first time I've told this story, and I haven't come to tears. But I find this story so intensely emblematic of the crisis, that our children are in danger. We are, well, I don't want to get too doom and gloom, but every time I play this tune and I tell the story, afterwards, without exception, people come up to me and say, I just love that polar bear song. Which record is that on? And you know, I mean, people are brought to tears by the story and then the way that we play it. And I sent you the lead sheet, and I said, this is actually one of the simplest compositions I've ever written, but in a way it's super hard because it's a 7/4 ostinato, quite slow. And I've played it with bass players who speed it up and bass players who slow down so much that I can't even play the melody anymore. And so it's actually a challenge on another level. You know, sometimes, especially young musicians, get fascinated by complicated and sophisticated stuff. But actually, sometimes the simplest things are where the real artistry lies. The sound, the phrasing, the emotional power of what's being played, the placement of rhythmic elements so that there's the maximum effect of all the other choices.
Well done, Andy.
You too, man.
That is so nice. And such a great message. Music is powerful, and that's what we try to promote here. Is I think that's a unifier among humans. Everyone loves music, and yet it's not put in the forefront of life. And that's what I'm
Especially when it's free.
Yes,
You never have to pay for it now.
I know.
But that's another discussion entirely.
There's so many. It's like we're running short on time here. One thing I thought was neat, because I know I've just noticed your posts over the last several years are always dealing with this environmental issue with climate change and animal protection, and I agree with all of it. It's just we're on the same page with that. And so through this whole COVID quarantine, I thought how eerie it was and how awesome actually that people were in lockdown and had to stay home and actually have a new thought of what they're doing with their day and what they do, and that the streets of the cities around the world were empty.
Yes.
So I was like, it's a global freeze. Everything is stopped. And then I thought also there's this cool effect in Ableton Live on a reverb called freeze, and it freezes the sound of the reverb, not of the actual instrument that's playing it. So
interesting.
when you hear it at the beginning, this piano, it's just normal. Then I put on the reverb and then I freeze it, and then that's this pad that's going on underneath the whole song. So it's like I always love these double meanings of titles. So then when we were talking about what songs to collaborate on, I was like, how perfect, we got to do this Global Freeze song. So then I gave it to Andy, and then I said, just do what you want. And then he started thinking, well, maybe I should do tenor and soprano, and we'll put a lot of reverb on it and make it this beautiful thing. And I mean, this is so nice. Turbulent Altercation, I love that. Aggressive, hardcore, high energy stuff. And my other absolute favorite thing is the opposite of that, which is melancholy, couple of chords. It's all about sound. It's all about emotion. And we just spoke about Mahler. You know, if I want to feel something about music, it's Mahler, Pat Metheny, Pete Jarrett. If you want to feel alive and feel the power of music, go check out a ballad by any one of those three guys, and you will feel something.
Let me add two names to that: Ralph Towner and Kenny Wheeler.
Yeah, that whole ECM world, you know, it's like
Yes.
we collaborated on this song. I put this video to it. I think it's a nice message to end with, especially with Andy's passion for environment and the earth. It's a special time we're living in, and we can all make a change. Do
Yes.
something in your area that makes a difference. Andy, is there a certain charity or program that you are a fan of?
Well, I really like what Extinction Rebellion is doing these days. People being willing to get arrested in large numbers, not only to make a statement, but actually to block up the workings of the institutions that are, in some cases, oppressing. Greenpeace has always been a very, very potent force and a really idealistic group of people. Natural Resources Defense Council. Oh, there's just so many. The World Wildlife Fund, Rainforest Alliance. I mean, there's organic food labeling. There's the plastics issue. There's the palm oil and the destruction of rainforests in Indonesia that are leading to the extinction of orangutans. And it's just overwhelming. And just like in music, follow your heart. What issue lights you up the most, and check it out. So all of these special interest groups vary from being very general to being very specific. You know, what are the treaties that the United States made with these sovereign nations worth if corporations are allowed to just say, oh yeah, right, but we got to build our pipeline?
Maybe we'll have to
Yes.
do segment 2 here this fall or something.
Yes, yes,
and-
let's do it.
But your talent and your ideas, thanks for sharing with all of us. And let's all do our part to change the world. And that is not just thoughts, that's action. And just know how lucky we are to live on such a beautiful planet.
Yes, in a beautiful time.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Darren. Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Andy. Take care of yourself.
It was a great pleasure.